I'm honored to have you here. From your service as a Navy and Marine Corps veteran to your work as a talk show host, advocate, and podcast creator, you've built quite a legacy of resilience and advocacy. Thank you for joining me. Exploring the foundation of your journey, what early experiences in your military career have influenced you, not just in your career, but also in the values that have guided you through each phase of your life?
Well, my life is really, I mean, if you have to go back in time, man, my life is, I could break it into 20-year increments. The first 20 years of my life, really going into the military, I'm a kid of I'm going to age myself, but I'm a child of the 50s. And, I had a pretty serious disciplinarian as a father who was he had made 4 jobs while we were growing up. He was always working, always working. Shift worker, he was a bus driver, he was a fireman, he was a carpenter, he was a musician. He did the gamut. And, he instilled a pretty serious work ethic in me, I think, because I just can't figure out how to slow down. But for him, education was the only responsibility that a child had in life. So if we didn't do well in school, we bore the burden of that from him, especially from him, being angry at your grades or looking at your report card. So, you didn't screw around when it came to school. It was one of the things that I really tried my best to plug me in, try my best to make sure we did right. But I was very much involved in a lot of stuff from student politics to activities and sports in school. So, I was like, yeah, I was president of my class 2 years in a row. I was a student on the board of education. I I fulfilled many roles going through school. I was president of the Thespian Society. I ran the school newspaper. Also ran a school radio station. I mean, so we did a lot of stuff. That I did a lot of things before I even entered the service. It kind of put me on a path that I was on. But truthfully, when I finally graduated from high school, my parents had already, I'm the youngest of four, had already spent a lot of money sending my older siblings to college. And, the well ran dry. So, I decided to go in the military to see if I could get the GI Bill and, go to college after I got out. And, but then it ended up working out because I got selected to go to the Naval Academy Prep School, and from the Naval Academy Prep School to the Naval Academy, got my degree out of the Naval Academy, got commissioned I went from the Marine Corps into the Navy as a naval officer, and I was a special duty intelligence officer in the Navy, and had a really just, and for me, a really cool career, that taught me lots of things, discipline in one, but also the fact that, I'm responsible for the footprint that I live on. And I've taken that into every other aspect of my life.
Outstanding. And thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
Looking into the military makeover show on Lifetime. Congratulations, by the way, on the nomination for the Outstanding Reality Show at the Family Film and TV Awards. What an incredible recognition on the show's impact on veterans and their families. What keeps you motivated to tell these powerful stories, and what can we look forward to in the new season?
Yeah, well, I got to tell you something. We just finished our 40th episode. We just finished our 40th episode, and as a matter of fact, that starts airing this coming Friday. I don't know if you're delayed when we air this, but that'll air throughout the rest of November and in the first couple of weeks of December. We just shot the family for our 41st episode or season, and we call them seasons because each family, we go in and it takes us 10 days to shoot a show, and actually 10 days to completely redo their homes. And so we just shot I do the sit down interviews with the family. So I sat down and interviewed a service member who happened to be a female, our first female Purple Heart recipient, a young lady. And you asked me, well, why and what do I get out of it, or why do I do it? It's because of people like her. I mean, our guest, Christy, it's just a tremendous young lady. Went in the service. She was, she's got a family lineage of people who have served in the military. She wanted to serve. She went in. She became a combat MP or combat police officer, and was immediately deployed to Afghanistan. And went in Afghanistan, and she was in from 2009 to 2012. Within 3 months of her hitting the ground there, she was involved in her first really traumatic IED situation where, an IED exploded about 10 feet in front of her truck. She witnessed with her own two eyes, a small child being vaporized, basically. She was thrown into her vehicle, got a severe concussion. But, like they do when they're there and deployed in forward operating bases, 2 days in Iraq, and then you're back out in the field the next day, even though she really hadn't really recovered from her first concussion. And about a month later, she's then actually hit with an IED, just a few feet from her vehicle, where she suffered some pretty severe injuries falling out of one of the MRAPs and hitting her knees on the ground and then being blown against the side of the vehicle. Had to recover and save her platoon sergeant herself, and then had to literally extricate them from the scene in a damaged vehicle. Got back, and now I'm talking to this young lady just 2 days ago, and this happened to her 12 years ago, but it's as vivid as if it happened yesterday. She's still bearing those invisible scars of PTSD, severe depression, severe pain, and it doesn't go away. She's got night tremors, night terrors all the time. And this is now 12 years later. And so for me, I got involved in the show because it's a way for us to stop just playing lip service. What I mean by playing lip service is that a lot of people walk around and see a veteran, and they go, "Hey, thank you for your service." "Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your service." What are they supposed to say back to that? Most of them are doing this not because they want to thank you. They're doing this because they're trying to preserve our democracy and our Constitution and our way of life. And I do this because this is an opportunity for us to do a little bit more than just say thank you. It's to show it and to do it. It's to make them really feel appreciated for what they've done and what they've lost for us. And I'm so looking forward to the next 20 seasons if we get another 20. But I'm looking forward to it because, though, so far we've only helped, I'm sorry, next 40. We've only helped 40 individual families, but we've helped 40 individual families. And our show airs internationally all over the world on Armed Forces Radio and Television. And so the veterans get an opportunity across the world, around the planet, those serving right now, get an opportunity to see the fact that we do care. We as a nation do care. It's more than just lip service, it's for real. And, for everybody listening to us today, you got to understand, my friend, we are only a day, a week, a month away from putting some of our precious treasures back into conflicts around the world. There are over 25 armed conflicts going on in the world right now as we speak, all around the world. And all it's going to take is one politician with a wild hair up their ass to say, we need to send troops this way. And some of those that are sending troops this way, we know, never put a uniform on their back, never had a child that served, never had a family member that served. So it's time for us to just recognize that we owe them a debt of gratitude that it's going to take us a long time to pay.
Let's see. You took over hosting military makeover duties from the late Arlie Ermy, who was deeply beloved by the veteran community. What was it like stepping into that role, and how do you approach carrying on his legacy through your work on the show?
Arlie was a tremendous guy. They call him the Gunny. From my Marine Corps days. I knew the Gunny, and I knew the Gunny from all the movies that he was in. Much respect for him. He did the first 20 seasons of Military Makeover. Arlie unfortunately passed away, and he had some knowledge of the fact that he was in that last quarter, and was asked actually by the production company who he thought might be able to fill his shoes, and he said me. And I was very honored of the fact that he selected me and knew of my work with veterans. And I try every day that I'm on that set to live up to what he had started and turn the show into something even a little bigger if we can, just to make sure again that we are giving back, not giving a hand up or a hand out, but giving back, stool to step on, just some respect. That's all these guys want. That's all they've ever wanted. They want to be able to walk down the street and hold their heads high and recognize that we honor what they've done for us. And so, I think of him often when I do the show, because he set a standard that is pretty hard to achieve or to come close to. But I'm trying my best.
Well, I'm glad they chose you and stuck with you. Done a great justice to
Thank
the
you.
show and to the veteran community. You've shared so many stories on military makeover. Is there one that resonated with you personally or changed your outlook?
Well, I mean, you nailed it. Every one of our families is just a little different, and every one of our families has a story that literally lives inside of you when you watch them and you watch them tell their story. Again, this veteran I just spoke to this weekend past, crazy in the fact that the second I started talking to her about her deployment, I mean, you could tell her. She said to me before she even started the interview was that, Montel, I'm sorry, but like I disassociate because I have to. I can't hold on to every single memory, though they're all stuck in my head like a Rolodex. And they're just flipping and flipping and flipping and flipping and flipping when I go to sleep. I see them all. I try not to focus on them all because I would never get any sleep. And she's the person who has a very, very difficult time sleeping because of all the night terrors that she gets. But we did a show a couple seasons back about the Hickson family. And the Hickson family was a family of a veteran who was now I left the military and became a teacher. Actually, was serving at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School when the shooting took place. And instead of running away, he ran towards to try to save his students. Unfortunately, he was one of the teachers who was killed that day. And he left behind a very strong wife, son, couple sons, one with special needs. That it was an honor to go in and redo their home for them, and to put a place in the house where, not a memorial, but just a place that they could focus in and remember Mr. Hickson and remember all that he had done. And I hear from his wife from time to time now. She went ahead and actually ran to become a school board member and achieve that goal after that happened. And that's one of the stories. But I got to tell you something. We're blessed because we have people being nominated from all over the country, and of course, anybody who's in earshot of your podcast, if they have a veteran friend or a veteran family nearby, they can nominate them to us. You just go up on militarymakeover.org. I'm sorry, .tv, and there's a thing you can click on if you want to nominate a family. And so nominate that neighbor down the street that just came back from deployment, or nominate that neighbor that is getting ready to get out. Let us know, because that's where we get all of our recipients from.
I'll definitely spread the word. You've been in their shoes as a veteran yourself. How do you think your own military experiences bring a unique perspective to the show?
Well, to this show, I think one of the things that I get to do, we have a team. I've got a team, Art Edmond, who literally scours every community that we're in, looking for possible partnerships with vendors in the community that will actually donate process products to us. And we rely very heavily on the community that we're working in to come in and volunteer, to paint, to swing hammers, to dig up yards, to replant flowers. So Art helps to coordinate a lot of those activities. And then we have a interior decorator stylist, Jen Bertrand, who she herself, she does homes and villas all over the world, and she tries to she captures the essence of the veteran family and making sure that the color palettes that she picks and some of the furniture that she picks and some of the things that are in the house once we get done, um, are what they're going to like before they get. So what we truly do, we kick them out. They have to leave their home. They got to pack up everything, leave your house. Goodbye. We'll see you 10 days from now. When they come back on the 10th day later, boom, they got a brand new house. And we do everything from ceilings to roofing to floors to walls to kitchens to bathrooms to backyards to you name it. We do the entire house. And so Jen, and it's like the Midas touch, man. That lady has the ability to like really, really, really focus in and capture the spirit of the veteran. And so my role is the interaction with that veteran family so that we can tell their story. And I think the fact that they know they're talking to a person who has been where they've been, has seen what they've seen, has tried to accomplish some of the things that they've tried to accomplish. It helps them open up a little bit. And, I think it's not that I think that people disrespectfully ask questions of veterans, but I think that I approach it a little differently because I know from whence they came.
Season 40 is a milestone for a military makeover, reflecting all these seasons. What has been the biggest lesson or insight you've gained from working with veterans and their families?
I got to tell you, the one that I really, really, really hone in on every show, and I see it in every family, is that, yeah. And when I said it earlier, the thank you for your service, sometimes people just say that in lip service, but if you walk up to a veteran, you say that and you really mean that from your heart, believe me, they will recognize that. So the one thing that I take away is the fact that sometimes are only captured by the last headline. We're only interested in the last headline that affects us. And though it seems like we have not had our precious treasures of this country on foreign soil fighting in the last, say, 10 to 11 years, folks, we just had a veteran come back, a soldier come back from Israel who was working on the pier in a body bag in Dover, Delaware. We don't recognize that almost every day we have a military member from around this world who gave the ultimate sacrifice for us. So the one thing that stands out to me the most is the fact that we can't wait till it's too late to say, I appreciate you. I thank you for having taken a role that maybe my child didn't have to take because you took it. I think the one thing that I get the most out of them is that they don't want you to have to come up and act like you think you owe them owe them a debt. They just want you to acknowledge the fact that they did for you.
Moving on to your health and resilience story. You've been very open about your personal health challenges as an MS warrior and stroke survivor. And how has it influenced your approach to life and advocacy?
Well, it's really crazy. I've lived I think about it sometimes and I look back at and wonder why am I still here? Because I've literally almost checked out 3 times and been able to come back on the other side and bounce back. And for the grace of God, I've been able to bounce back and recover from some pretty horrific things that normally take other people's lives. The one thing that really resonates with me more than anything is the fact that the joy I have in still being able to be here and to serve. You know, this when I had my stroke, I thought that was going to be over. I thought, I'm done. This is all that life had for me. And yet, while laying on the gurney in the hospital in New York Presbyterian Hospital in New York, a representative walked in and offered me the show Military Makeover. And that was like, are you kidding me? Of course I'll do this show, without a doubt. And that really was one of those driving things behind me to get my ass up out of that bed, to get walking, to get talking, to get moving, to get it right, because I wanted to do this right.
It's quite the motivator.
Quite the motivator. So, and it's given me now years of service that I probably would not have been able to have. One of the things that I think most people need to understand is that we go through this life, all of us do, somewhat narcissistically believing it's all about us. But the truth of the matter is, it ain't about you at all. It's about what you have the ability to do for others. And when you finally learn that, it makes life worth living.
Your resilience in the face of health challenges has inspired many. Are there specific practices or mindsets that helped you during your most challenging moments?
I got to tell you, I am a true believer in exercise, true believer in your diet, true believer in taking care of my mental health the best I can. And that means spending some time with me, mindfulness, thinking about the things that are most important in this world. But I will tell you, I am, I'll even throw it out there because I don't really care what people think about it. 68 years old, my friend. I go to the gym every fucking day. Excuse my mouth. I go to the gym every day. I have to. It's part of what helps keep me walking correct. It helps keep me standing correct. It helps me have the energy level that I need to be able to pursue all the other things that I'm trying to work on. So, I think sometimes we get in that oh woe is me mode where I'm too tired today, or I just can't today. I could try to make an excuse after we get done this podcast and say, I can go tomorrow. I won't go today. No, get your butt to the gym today. After we get done talking, I'll change my clothes. I'll get down to the gym. I got to. I have to. That's really what's going to help me feel better tomorrow. I know for a fact that when I eat better, I feel better the next day. When I exercise, I feel better the next day. When I do mindfulness things and I meditate, I feel better the next day. So why would I pass up the opportunity to feel better when I wake up?
You had mentioned a more strict diet. What kind of diet are you going on these days?
Well, I mean, I've done. I hate the word. I always hate the term diet because it implies restricting yourself in some way. I just try to pay attention to getting fruits and vegetables through my system as much as I can. I just now at lunch, my wife stopped at a restaurant, close to us, and picked up this thing they call a Mediterranean bowl. And that Mediterranean bowl is a combination of some very, very, very small portion of protein, beef protein, but filled with vegetables and chickpeas and other things and other things. So I try to gobble that down, get as much of that in me as I can. And I try to avoid eating too much of any individual thing too many days in a row. And as long as I do that, am I as strict as I used to be when I first had my stroke? No. But am I relatively strict? Yes. I mean, but I also don't believe in deprivation. I think if you deprive yourself of stuff, all you're going to do is want it more, and by the time you do it, you're going to be a glutton over it. So, do I eat treats every now and then? Yeah, I do. I give myself a treat every now and then. It's not like I don't say Sunday's treat day. If I look back on the last 5 days and I haven't had anything that was kind of a treat, and for me, sometimes treats could be, I'll eat a little ice cream or I'll eat a little sorbet. But if I haven't had any in 3 or 4 days, I can have some today, a little bit, and I will have for another 3 or 4 days. If I want to have one cookie or two cookies, I might have one or two cookies today. I won't have ice cream or cookies for 3 or 4 more days. Just won't do it. And it's not like I walk in the kitchen and go, oh, no, there's cookies. No, I just, I had it. I was good enough. I'm satisfied. I still feel the taste in my mouth. I got it. I understand what it was. Move on. So maybe I'll eat fruit instead of cookies. Maybe I'll eat a banana. Maybe I'll eat some applesauce. Maybe I'll eat, some watermelon. I'll eat something else that will sate that desire to have that sweet treat and get me through the next couple of days when I don't need to have it. So, you know, that's where I'm eating now. I believe more in kind of a be as vegan as you can be if you want. And on those days that you don't want, then go and go for it, but just don't be stupid.
It's like a vegan-ish.
Veganish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the ice cream flavor for Montel? What's your ice cream of choice?
And I had literally got stuck on stupid on just vanilla for a long time.
Nothing wrong with
Um,
that.
If I really had to say I'm going to go to the store and grab something, I would probably eat butter pecan. I like nuts. I like a lot of nuts in my stuff. Yeah.
As an advocate, you've brought attention to health issues that others often avoid discussing. How do you view the roles of advocacy in changing perceptions and inspiring action, especially in the health space?
I think it's almost criminal. Anybody out there practices things that make them feel better and you don't share that with others, you're a criminal. I mean, I think it's just part of your responsibility of living on this planet and being a member of our society that what you learn, you share. And so that's what I try to do. I think anybody can be an advocate. If there's something that you do, like for me, I can tell you something. I was even talking to one of my doctors about this a while ago. Especially after my stroke, for the first 6 or 7 months after my stroke, I wasn't in a fog as much as I didn't have. I even tried to go to after I stopped rehab, which was 3 months after I had it, and I was back to walking and physically being okay. I started going to the gym again. But then I started noticing that I didn't have the same energy level as before my stroke, and so I would at least I do this at least 4 days a week. I take a nap in the afternoon. I take a nap, get up from my nap,
I
sit
envy
around for
you.
I sit around for a little bit, then I go to the gym. I take a nap, I go to the gym. And for me, that works. And it works well. And I go to the gym hour and a half. Come back up and I'm fine for the rest of the night. I go to sleep that night. I get up the next day and do the same thing. Um, so I mean, for some people, naps don't work. Other people, it do. It works for me.
I wish I had time for a nap. Moving on to your podcast, Free Thinking with Montel.
Yes.
You cover such a wide range of topics from current events to personal stories. What has inspired you to create this space? And are there any episodes or guests that have had a lasting impact on you?
Well, I'll tell you, I've had such a uh, fun time doing free thinking because again, across the gamut, it's not a political show. It's not just a health show. It's an idea show. I like to bring people on who have different ideas about different things and help them express them to the public. Um, I look back at some of the guests I've had. They all have a spot inside of me now. I can think back because some of our guests have given up and talked about so many things that have been so powerful. I've had a lot of guests, or I'd say probably about 60% of my guests have come on to talk about their MS journey or their journey with a chronic illness. And those have been some that have been the most heartwarming. And I think the ones that have done the best as a public service because it lets people understand that no matter where you are in life, there's always the other side. There's always a better side. We can, I think about it often. There's so often people get caught up in oh, woe is me, oh, woe is me, oh, woe is me, oh, woe is me, that they don't realize that not everything is, oh, woe is me. It's not. There is a bright light. You get up in the morning, what's that silly song? Yeah, that silly song. The sun will come out tomorrow. It does. Whether you like it or not, it does. Might not be out today. Today we got a cloudy day and it's raining today. The sun's going to come out tomorrow here. I'm in Miami. It's coming out. You can't stop it. And instead of focusing on the fact that the ground's wet right now, I focus on the fact that tomorrow I'm gonna walk and there's not gonna be a puddle.
What are some of the key messages you hope listeners take away from free thinking?
Just that. I hope they come to the table recognizing one, I'm not alone. Because some people who tune in may tune in because they're trying to get advice for an issue that they're dealing with in their own lives, and they think they're the only one. Well, they're not. And two, they can walk away getting some tangible things that they can hold on to that help inspire the guests that I had on to live a better and fuller life.
Your conversations are known for challenging conventional thinking. What topic or guest would you love to explore next that you think could push boundaries for your audience?
we're recording this conversation right now, and I don't know if you don't mind me saying, but we're recording this on election day.
Indeed.
The election is going to be over tomorrow, whether we like it or not. It's over tomorrow. There are going to be a lot of people running around here with like chickens with their heads cut off. Ah, the sky is falling. No, I can't live. I want to leave America. Oh, I hate my mother. I hate my brother. I hate my sister because they voted for the other part. Knock that shit off, please. Remember, the sun will come out tomorrow. We all have to live here tomorrow on. We have to live here tomorrow on together. This is one of the longest surviving democracies ever on. Think about that. Ever. On the face of the planet. Ever. There's never been a society like the United States of America. Ever. And one vote and one leader isn't necessarily going to change that. So, I'm hoping that I can have some guests on, and I wouldn't mind even talking to them, because I believe very strongly in one thing. I have a right to think and believe anything I want to believe. I can speak to you, John. I can speak to you without offending, and I can listen without being defensive. I want to have people on my podcast who recognize that we can have a difference of opinion, but we can respect each other and figure out how we can walk out the door the next day hand in hand, or walk out the door the next day, at least with a vision of keeping the same thing here. So, what would I like to have on my show? I've stayed out of the political forum specifically for a reason. Because I don't like divisiveness. I don't think it does anybody any good. But I think I can have conversations with people who don't have my same opinion and find common ground that makes us want to at least live together in a single society under a single banner. And so I wouldn't mind stepping a little bit more into discussions about how we get that done.
When you're in the military, before thoughts of being a television host and personality, were politics even a possibility for you?
What, thinking about going into politics?
Correct.
I really tell you, it's very interesting. I'm a Naval Academy graduate from Annapolis. I ascended to the rank of lieutenant commander in the military. I've held the highest clearances this country's has. I was stationed at the National Security Agency. I was a special duty intelligence officer during the Cold War. I served in every hotspot that we had around the world in my time on service. There was a period of time where I had a lot of people telling me, you should run for office, you should run for office, you should run for office. And I thought about it for a little while. And then I recognized that, no, not for me. And I'll tell you why, because I can't be beholden to anybody. I can't owe you anything. And right now, think about it. It's election day. And as of today, 2 people have spent over $2.9 billion to buy you. And they got the $2.9 billion from a whole bunch of people who come walking back to them with a handout saying, gimme, 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 because I gave you. I'm not that person. Because I would say, get the hell out of my office. You didn't give me that money because you wanted me to do something for you back. You said you didn't want me to give you something back. Now don't come in here and tell me you want me to do something back for you. And saying something like that would probably get me killed. So I don't want to die. I think I'll try my best to continue to impact our society on the periphery the way I'm doing it now.
With free thinking, what do you see as your responsibility to your listeners in times of significant social change, such as now?
Well, like I said, I think what I'd like to try to do now is try to not heal the wounds of division, but show a nation that we can disagree, agree to disagree, and then agree upon the things that need to keep us a nation.
Awesome. You're also known as a quite advocate for the cannabis movement, and which also brought upon your next podcast, Let's Be Blunt with Montel.
Yep.
It's become a go-to source for cannabis education. What has inspired you to launch the podcast, and how do you see it as part of your broader mission to change perceptions about cannabis?
You know, a lot of people don't know. I've been in this cannabis industry for almost 24 years, long before it was vogue, long before people thought it was a green rush. I was one of the guys running around this country testifying before legislators, trying to ensure that patients like me have access to efficacious medication. We now know for a fact, it's not just we, the world knows for a fact that cannabis has a medical place in our society. It's had it for over 5,000 years. 5,000 years. Most people who are probably listening to your podcast don't even know that, you know, rather than tobacco and cotton, hemp and cannabis is what made this country succeed in its early years. You didn't know that, but most people don't know that go back to the 1680s, 1690s, 1700s, you could pay your taxes with hemp. All of our forefathers grew hemp. And back then I call it hemp only because they didn't distinguish between hemp and marijuana. They were one and the same. So back then, the entire Revolutionary Army was clothed in hemp fiber. George Washington's Mason tents were all made of hemp. The word canvas comes from cannabis. We as a society consume more cannabis. Look, every rope, every sail, every sheet, 90% of the clothing that was made in the world was made from hemp fiber. Why? Because it doesn't rot in salt water. So this is something that, and then if you go back 5,000 years, you can find it having been written about in cornucopias for medicine around the world. And then all of a sudden in 1937, we pass a law in the United States of America that decides to ban marijuana worldwide only because we did so with really nefarious reasons behind it. Most people don't even know this. Charles DuPont and William Randolph Hearst were the leaders in getting cannabis made illegal. William Randolph Hearst being one of the biggest destroyers of American trees, knowing that if we allowed for hemp and hemp growth in America, it could have shut his businesses down. And Charles DuPont wanted to turn the world over and get us into fossil fuels so he could use more oil and textile products. So this is not something that is bad. It was just vilified at the turn of the century because we wanted to establish some hatred for individuals of different colors coming into this country. We know that there are at least 2,500 different usages for the hemp plant. 2,500. You can make everything from concrete to batteries to plastic to medicines to fibers to clothing to furniture, paper. Remember, the Declaration of Independence was written on hemp paper.
I didn't know there was so many
George
uses.
Washington grew it. Thomas Jefferson grew it. All of our forefathers grew it. Come on now, man. Think for a second. I want you to really please just stop for a second, clear your mind, and hear what I'm about to say. You mean to tell me that 10 guys, 12 guys got around in a room and they said, you know what? I think every man should be created equal. I think we should have a society that's free where every person's vote really counts. And you think they did that and they weren't high? I'm going to tell you right now, most people in this country don't even recognize the fact that at the same time that they were doing that, all of them were drinking 24 hours a day, some sort of an alcoholic beverage. Did you know that? Did you know back in 1690, 1710, you couldn't go to the creek down the street, put a cup in it, and drink that water? Why? Because upstream from you about 100 yards was a lion, tiger, or bear that was taking a you-know-what in that water. So there was all kinds of bacteria and illness. So what did they do? They used to boil water and then turn it into a 2.7%, 2.8% alcoholic based beverage to kill the bacteria. And let's also remember 1790, we didn't have toilet paper. You were still walking out of the weeds, grabbing a leaf and wiping your butt. You were sleeping on the ground. You had more pests, more junk crawling on you than you could ever imagine. We didn't start sleeping in beds until early 1800s. So these were tough times. No air conditioning, no heat. People were trying to survive. Were they chewing on a hemp leaf? Heck yeah. Were they chewing on some hemp flower? Heck yeah. Were they smoking it everywhere? Heck yeah. Now, I'm not an advocate for us walking around being stoned all day long and smoking pot all day long. What I am an advocate for is that we now know that there are constituent parts of that plant that could be the key to healing some of the worst illnesses on this planet. There's research happening in Australia that shows that some of the minor cannabinoids may have effect on things as virulent as various types of cancer that we have. We know that in Israel, they've been doing research for 30 years, identifying the fact that in some cases, cannabis does block the blood supply to certain forms of cancer. We know that in various places in the world, they've discovered that other minor cannabinoids had extreme impact on things like COVID viruses. So the truth of the matter is, this is a plant that was here. And if you believe in what Albert Einstein said, for every action is equal and opposite reaction, cannabis is probably the opposite reaction to several of the worst diseases that we have. If we did the right research, we could find out the efficaciousness of it and use it the right way. Unfortunately, we've been so caught up in using it as a re-enslavement tool in America that we ban even doctors having the ability to study it. And think about that. There's not another plant on the planet that you can't study, but you can't study marijuana. Now, why is that? And when you look around the world right now, back in 1962, 62, 63, the UN signed a treaty to stop hemp and cannabis exportation and deportation and importation around the world. Over 160 countries have pulled out of that treaty now, all over the world. South Africa, Colombia, Brazil, Brazil, Chile, Australia, half of all of Europe, Isle of Man. China's even growing hemp now and exporting it. So there's a reason. And we better get on this stick quickly before we realize that we get left behind. If you make cement, hempcrete, out of the hemp plant, we know that that concrete will last longer than the concrete that we make here now and use up less resources. How crazy are we?
That is amazing. What's been one of the most eye-opening or memorable guest stories you shared on Let's Be Blunt that expanded your own understanding of cannabis and its potential?
I'm trying. When you just asked me a question, my brain just went blank on the doctor's name. Hold on a second. This doctor. I have a doctor on every now and then from Boston who has now researched. This is a Harvard-trained doctor. He has treated close to 500,000 patients from around the world, Northeast, and has made some discoveries that are phenomenal when it comes to cannabis. I've had everybody from Dr. Sanjay Gupta on to Dr. Oz to some of the leading politicians around the world that are pro, for, and against. I don't say it to pat myself on the back, but I've been doing this for 24 years. So I've been studying this plant from every direction that you can probably study it from. And I've had guests on that I've shocked with the fact that I may have as much knowledge as they have, or even greater knowledge than they have in the plant itself. But I'm always fascinated by the stories with, I don't know if you know the term N of one, the letter N of one. That means
No.
in science, that means that, you've heard these stories of people who have this spontaneous remission of cancer that shouldn't have happened. You hear these stories of a person who, drank a glass of water and all of a sudden the cancer just went away, the tumor went away. That's considered an N of one because you can't research that person. You research them, but there's nobody else you can compare them to because the story doesn't exist. There are so many N of ones when it comes to cannabis that I'm blown away. I'm blown away by the stories of children who have had intractable seizures, 60, 70, 80, 100 a day, consume just 1 gram of cannabis, goes down to 3 a day. Consume 2 grams of cannabis, goes down to 0 in a week. That's not me talking. Those are the doctors that treat them talking. But they won't validate the fact that this is an efficacious medication. So I'm going to stay on this and try to hope that people have access to medicines that work. And when you look around the world, you go to Israel, cannabis is a geriatric drug. They have been able to reduce the amount of medication that some of the patients that they have in hospice, that they have in nursing homes are taking just by putting them on cannabis. Unfortunately, Big Pharma doesn't like the fact that there's something out there that you can't patent, because you can't patent the plant. You can try, but they're not going to let you patent the plant. And what nature gives you, and just think about it, cannabis is a weed. I can drop it in dirt, put a little water on it, walk away. If I'm in the right climate, come back, it's going to be 6 feet tall without me doing a damn thing to it. Now, I can go through all the machinations that we're going through here in the United States, building these farms and spending all this ridiculous amount of money and all this ridiculous amount of research to grow a weed. Or I can just do what they do in Afghanistan, drop the seeds in the ground and let it grow. And at the end of the day, check it for mold and other detrimental fungi and things that grow on it. But then once I've done that, I've got something that's not going to cost me a lot of money to produce, not millions and billions of money of research to produce. I can produce this thing over and over again. Will I get it at the exact same time, exact same every time I plant a seed? No, but I'm going to get it pretty close. So, this is something that Big Pharma has never wanted us to have, because they would rather, spend billions of dollars on research than go and shove that billions of dollars up your butt, paying them back for medications that cost 12, 13, 14, 1500, 1800, 2400. I take a medication right now once a month that's over $2,400 a month. Just one of the medications I take.
Yikes.
Yeah, crazy.
For listeners who may be new to cannabis, where would you recommend they begin on Let's Be Blunt to learn about the benefits and proper uses of cannabis?
I would go back and you can go through my archive. I've got well over 300 recorded episodes of it. And I've talked to some of the top doctors in the industry from around the world. So you can just go down that list, look for any one of the doctors' names that we have there, and they will take you on a journey, and that'll help you understand, the viability and the efficaciousness of that plant.
As an advocate, you've watched the cannabis industry evolve from taboo to mainstream. What do you see as the next big steps in public perception or policy? And how is your podcast helping to drive that change?
I try to have on some of the luminaries in the business so that I can get them to talk about how they're going to change the idea around how we sell this product and how we market it. I mean, one of the biggest problems I think with the cannabis industry right now is lack of education. Education. That is the key to this entire industry. The consumer needs to be educated and feel comfortable, but we're not doing a good job of that in this industry. And we need to start doing a good job of that. And so does the federal government. They need to start doing a better job of allowing for its use. Right now there was supposed to be a DEA hearing the middle of next month on rescheduling, and now that's been pushed out pushed back to after the inauguration. And then they'll probably push it back another 60, 70 days. Remember, back 4 years ago, the Harris-Biden administration ran on the fact that in the first 100 days they were going to change the laws on cannabis. That didn't happen, did it? So, and now you've heard both Harris and Trump both saying that it's something that they're going to deal with in their first 100 days. That ain't happening. I'm hoping that when people tune into the podcast, they'll recognize that there is a certain amount of advocacy that's going on in every episode also. And so what I'd like them to do is tune in anytime we ask you, because I have a lot of guests come on and say, you can reach out to them anytime you want. And start reaching out to some of these guests and some of these people who are some of the biggest players in the industry across the country and let them know that, most of the issues with cannabis right now, I think, is lack of understanding, lack of knowledge. So what we need to start doing is doing many more public service announcements. We need to go do a couple movies. We need to do some documentaries, not just one a year, but several of them, to let people understand that there's nothing to be afraid of. Knowledge is king. And if you go into this with the right amount of knowledge, you can make good decisions for yourself, your family, and your loved ones.
Speaking of the advocacy for cannabis, it's always been viewed as personal for you as well as professional. How has cannabis impacted your daily life, and what advice would you give to people who are curious but hesitant about exploring it?
The one thing about cannabis is, again, I go back to this whole first thought of knowledge. Knowledge is king. There are so many unbelievably good books written out there right now on cannabis that let me see if I can find one here. I've got them all over the place. And I don't happen to have one right in front of me. They're Goldstein. Dr. Goldstein is a book that you can go out and find. Bonnie Goldstein. Dr. Kaplan from Harvard, former Harvard doctor. He has a book out right now also on cannabis. And his book is filled and steeped with statistics and information about the uses of cannabis and what it's good for and what it's not good for. I'm not trying to tell you that it's the end all. It's not the cure to every disease that's out there, but it is a medication that, if used the right way, can help anybody with issues deal with those issues that they're dealing with. I think anybody who gravitates to cannabis over alcohol is gravitating to it for a medical reason anyway, to begin with. They want to rest, they want to be able to relax when they get home from work, they want to be able to sleep better, they want to be able to ease some pain. I think it does it all. You just have to make sure you steep yourself with the knowledge first before you jump 2 feet in. And then if you go to an authorized state-run dispensary, and almost all the state dispensaries follow the guidelines that the state put out, so you're getting a medication that is probably going to be well tested, looking for any residual deleterious kinds of things from bad chemicals that have been put in it. They try to reduce the amount of harm in the products. So I think if you go to a dispensary and you say, look, I've never tried this before, and I want to see if this may help me with XYZ, the biggest piece of advice I can give anybody is slow as you go. Slow as you go. Do not go in there, try to grab the highest THC product, go home and smoke a whole joint on your first journey into a dispensary, because you'll never go back.
On a lighter note, are you more of an indica or sativa person?
Let me tell you, what's so interesting about that is that, and the industry, again, education. That's the most important thing. We have hybridized this plant so much that the word indica sativa really doesn't exist. I'm going to tell you, from my perspective, I've been looking at this for the last 20 years. There's been so much hybridization where people have been crossbreeding. Look, here in America, we tried to grow the minor cannabinoids out of the plant back in the early 60s, the mid 60s, and early 70s. It wasn't until the 80s that they started growing some of those minor cannabinoids back into the plant. What I mean by minor cannabinoids is THC is the cannabinoid that has been most associated with the euphoric effect. Though we're now starting to see that some of the other minor cannabinoids, when mixed together, can have a euphoric effect also. It may not be as intense as the THC one, but it's there. So one of the things that in doing these hybrids, they try to reduce the amount of CBD. They try to reduce the amount of CBN, CBDA, CBT. There's several different minor cannabinoids, CBN, that elicit other responses that they messed with, played with. It's like, how do we get a purple rose? How did you get a pink rose? You got a pink rose by crossing a white rose and a red rose. Okay? And then you cross them again and again and again until you get the color you like. Well, people have been doing that with cannabis, crossing, then I don't really believe the true term indica sativa still really exists. I think they're all hybrids, but from my perspective, I prefer, it depends on the time of the day. It depends on what I'm going after. If I'm going after trying to go to work and working through my neuropathic pain, I like a higher THC product. If I want to go to sleep, I like a higher CBD product. But I like them mixed together. I don't like them by themselves, either one. And most of the indicas are a little bit higher in CBD. It's a bushier plant, a smaller plant. The THC plants normally grew really taller and had longer fruit on it, which is the buds that are caused really where the psychotropic components are. And I kind of like mine just a little bit more THC than CBD.
Awesome. Looking back at the Montel Williams show after you got out of the military, you've made a lasting impact as a talk show host by covering topics that are often avoided by mainstream media. Looking back, are there any episodes or guests from the Montel Williams show that stand out as a particularly that's memorable?
I did about 3,100 shows throughout my 17-year career of the Montel Williams show, which was crazy. And that meant I had about somewhere around 3,800 guests, almost 4,000 guests on the show, sitting on the stage beside me throughout that 17-year period of time. I think part of the reason why we lasted as long as we did was because the show that I did respected the living rooms I was invited into. And we did topics that were not so sensational that people would come back the next day. We did several shows that literally changed our world in a way. I did a show I'll never forget. I did a show, back when there were a rash of kidnappings of women being kidnapped and children being kidnapped in shopping areas and shopping malls back in the early mid 90s. I did a couple of shows that literally transformed the automobile industry. Why? Because of the shows that we did, we kept calling for legislation to force them to put internal trunk release latches for every car. And every single car in the world has them now. They would have never happened. They would have never happened had there not been a talk show talking about the fact that there were little girls being thrown in trunks, lids slammed, having to punch out the back light, wave their hand out the window, rather than just put a latch in there that could open up the back trunk from the inside. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
So, and then also, I did some shows that a couple of kids used to survive after they had been grabbed, where, if a person pulled the hand receiver off of a back then analog phone, you could tap on the little mechanism that hangs the phone up. If you tap out 911, it would ring the phone. Most people didn't know that. We did a lot of shows, and I think several of the other talk shows kind of, I'll call it bastardized what we tried to do. We did a few shows where I started the entire process of having a DNA test on a show, but I didn't do that because I was trying to figure out who the baby daddy was. We were trying to figure out the child's lineage so we could find her a kidney. So I did a lot of shows that I think, looking back at, were poignant, left a lasting image. I mean, Ryan White, one of the first the young man who was HIV positive, and nobody could figure out where he got the HIV from. Nobody could ever figure out. We had him on. That was really back when we were first talking about HIV, and our society was twisted trying to say that it was only coming from one community, but it was coming from a lot of different places. So I look back at a lot of his guests. I can remember some of their names, but I can remember the stories as if it was yesterday.
What part of hosting a daily talk show do you think audiences would be surprised to learn about, especially given the challenges of live television?
A lot of people didn't know that I was the first host to do more than 3 shows. I did 3 shows a day. So I would do a show in the morning, afternoon, and evening, 3 times a week. So I was shooting 9 shows a week. Most people think that you go in and shoot one show a day, put it in a can, and shoot the next one, next one. No, I was shooting. I did that the entire time for 17 years. I did 3 shows a day, 3 days a week for 17 years.
It's
It's crazy.
chaotic.
And I averaged 8 guests per show. So that was 24 guest stories that I had to read, study, and learn the night before. I would walk on the set and sit down and talk to them. And it looked like it was seamless. But I'm telling you, like, to think through think about it. If you have 8 friends of yours come into your house and tell you a story, and then tomorrow you got to go back and tell those stories. And they'll do it for 24 of them. So though it was challenging. It was a tough time, but it was also a great time. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I got a little tired near the end, so I was glad that the show ended when it did. But I'm looking for opportunities to get back on and do some more right now.
If there was anything different that you would change today, what would it be?
I think if I could change any of the aspects of my show that I did back then, we as a world had a different attention span. So the attention span of most of the viewers is entirely different today than it was back then. I don't believe that my show would have been as successful had it started yesterday. I don't think so, because I don't think people have the wherewithal to be able to sit and listen to one thing for an hour. However, if I could do it all again, or I'd start a new one now, I would have condensed the number of stories we tried to tell in an hour and tell them with a little more depth and more focus, and come out of them with a little bit more meaning of how you could learn from what you just experienced.
And with the shift from traditional media to podcasts and digital spaces, how do you view the role of talk shows today? And what elements of the format do you feel are still relevant and most valuable to audiences?
I think the podcasts have become the talk show of the day.
True.
And just like right now, you're sitting with me for an hour. So it's one-on-one. It's an opportunity for people to voyeuristically tune in, catch our conversation, listen to it for an hour, walk away, hopefully having learned something. I think that's the part of it that I like the best. I don't watch any of the daytime television shows that are on right now, talk shows.
Looking on to your mental health and community impact, mental health has been a major theme across your work, your TV shows, podcasts, especially with veterans. What have you found to be the most important in supporting mental wellness for veterans and those facing chronic conditions?
I've been working on a project now for almost 14 years. It's a project that's called the RTM protocol, which is Reconsolidation of Traumatic Memories. And this protocol has been deemed the most efficacious treatment for PTSD in the world by the governing body for traumatic illness. That protocol right now has been deployed to the Ukraine. It's being used in Ukraine and Poland to treat some of the Ukrainian soldiers and some of the civilians. This protocol works not only for combat PTSD, but also works for civilian PTSD or for any form of traumatic memory. I've been really working. I was always almost, well, not almost, at the level of the Secretary of the Navy, at the Pentagon, trying to get this more incorporated in the treatment for our veterans. And also, we don't really know this or don't understand it, but we probably got about 12% of this nation walking around with PTSD on any given day, not just military members, 12%. And these are people who survived COVID, people who survived other horrific events in their lives, and they've not been able to get away from that traumatic experience, hindering their success in life. And so, what I really am trying my best to do is make this an integral part of all treatment protocols around the world.
As a veteran yourself, what advice would you give to those who are transitioning back into civilian life, maybe struggling with mental health challenges, especially with those, with the undiagnosed PTSD? What would you tell the person, how would you tell them just to go in, get tested, to go talk to somebody?
You are not alone. You have to make sure they understand that there is help available. They are not alone. Someone's there who wants to reach out and be that arm or shoulder that they can hold on to. That's there. You just have to go out and take the first step. It's just like, any recovery program in the world. There are people standing by to give you the help you need. You just have to ask for it. For the longest time, I was probably one of the biggest critics of our VA system, but our VA has come a long way, and they're coming a longer way every single day. They're trying their best to do the best they can for those who have done the most for us. And so I would suggest any veteran out there, if you didn't get the help you needed at the VA, well, now, because of the laws that have been passed, you have the ability to seek outside help. So seek outside help, but understand help is not a bad word. And there's nothing weak about it. There's nothing makes you lesser of a person, makes you lesser of the soldier that you were. It's really what's going to make you a better one.
What role do you see for communities and families in supporting veterans and individuals facing mental health challenges?
Well, I don't think it's just not just mental health challenges, but I think it's incumbent upon every community in this country to recognize the debt we owe. It's but for the grace of God and but for those who put that uniform on, it would be your child with that uniform on if it wasn't them. So let's make sure that we step up to the plate, do all we can to help those veterans who live in our community, live down the street, live in an apartment building you live in. I mean, I'm doing a house makeover, military makeover, but you don't have to rebuild a person's home. What you can do is maybe if you live down the block from a veteran who's got a house on the corner and you know that one or the other is deployed, why not when you ride your riding lawnmower to cut your grass on Saturday morning, drive down the street and cut their grass? Just say thank you that way. Why not if you made that extra meal, or you overcooked tonight and you got some leftovers there, take it down the street. Take it down to one floor in your apartment building. Knock on that veteran's door and say, hey, you know what? Let's cook this. And I know you just got back from deployment and you guys probably aren't settled in yet, but here, take this. This is something that might help you. How about, go knock on the door of a veteran family in the building you live in or down the street from where you live. They just came back from deployment. They just now got back there and say, hey, look, I know you have small kids. If you want, I'll volunteer to babysit for you guys for one night so you go have a date night. But just do something. Do something to be a good neighbor and be a better neighbor to our veterans.
Awesome. Talking about your upcoming book, The Sailing of the Intrepid.
Yes.
It's something fans are very excited about. Can you tell us what inspired this project and what themes you hope readers take away from it?
Excuse me, I'm a board member of the Fisher House, the Fisher Foundation, and Ken Fisher, who's the patriarch of that foundation, also sits as the president of the Intrepid Foundation. The Intrepid is, for those who don't know, was the first of its class of aircraft carriers of this type built during World War II. One of the most modern advanced warships built at the time that World War II began. And right after Pearl Harbor incident, Intrepid was put into service, sailed into the North Pacific, and of course was going into harm's way against the Japanese, and got struck by a torpedo in its rudder. That torpedo that struck it locked the rudder in about a 45-degree angle, so that the ship was forced to just turn circles. was hard to steer. You could not keep it in steerage way. And so there was a moment in time where we almost considered scuttling that ship so that the Japanese couldn't get it. It wouldn't reattack it. And because of the resilience and because of the ingenuity and the wherewithal of its captain, who's captain by the name of Captain Sprague, he thought to himself, well, and got some crew members together who said, Captain, if we were to hang a sail off the front of this ship on the opposite side of where the rudder is stuck, we could probably counterbalance the waves, the ocean, and then the way the ship is being forced to steer one way. We could probably kind of keep steerage at least straight. Well, they did that and ended up taking that ship back about 1,200 miles to Pearl Harbor, where they went in, did some quick repairs on it, then sent it up to Washington State to be completely overhauled and put back in service. Then that ship was hit by 2 kamikazes, 2 separate times. Each time limped its way back into port, repaired, back in service. After World War II, and it participated in multiple successful campaigns. After World War II, went on to serve in Korea. Went on to serve as the recovery ship for our space program. Did that before it was retired and actually tied up pierside in the Hudson River in New York, where it's now a maritime war museum. So it's kind of like the unsinkable Molly Brown in a way. And because of the breadth of how wide that story is, we just focus in on the story of it and its sail. This is like the perfect juncture of historic means of naval navigation and a modern warship having to rely on the sail to actually save it. So it's an incredible story of ingenuity, of get it done-ness that I thought was worth telling, and telling it from the perspective of, we've been able to garner some diaries from some of the people who were on board, some of the people who participated in actually creating the sail. They used body bags and hatch covers, any spare piece of canvas on board that ship that they could use to sew that sail together and then rig it on the front of the ship to actually help keep a modern warship in the fight. So it's an incredible story. I thought it was a story that was worth telling.
I can't wait to read it. Writing is often a reflective process. Do you often discover anything new about yourself when you're writing?
In the process, you want to write more. I can tell you this right now. It's just like, this is my 9th book. I thought I was done writing after the 8th one, but this is now opened it back up to me again. And now I'm really looking forward to working with my co-author and looking at working on several more.
Going to some fun and lighthearted questions before we wrap up. When you're not working or advocating, what brings you joy or helps you unwind? What are some unexpected hobbies?
Well, that's I'm an exercise enthusiast, so I like to work out as much as I can. But I really honestly enjoy spending time with my wife. She and I are streaming junkies. So we love streaming shows and just sitting down on the couch with some popcorn and her feet in my lap and me rubbing her feet and watching away. We watch 5, 6 episodes in a night.
What's your current series you're streaming now?
There's a new one with Billy Crystal that's really kind of weird, man. But I was gonna tune out, and I was like, no, let me watch. I'm gonna finish this thing. It's called Before.
I haven't heard of
But
that one.
we've watched everything from Prison Escape to The Perfect Couple. I mean, you name it, we've watched it.
What is on your Spotify playlist? What music motivates you, especially when you're working out?
I'm an old school guy, so believe it or not, I still don't do Spotify. I do old playlists that I put together. One of my favorite groups of all time was the Tower of Power, so I'm a Tower of Power junkie. I like old R&B where it was real music. And I like old school rock. Believe it or not, I'm a Zeppelin fan. So
Nice.
you might catch me while listening to some old school Zeppelin. I'm definitely a Santana fan. Uh, but yeah, I like old school. Tina Marie fan. So I'm like that child of the '80s, early '90s.
And last one, I'd like to ask my fellow vets, what was your favorite MRE? Did you have MREs in the Navy?
Oh hell yeah! You
Okay,
kidding
just
me?
making sure.
I'm not, yeah. Oh wait a minute. You know, I used to. This is gonna sound crazy. They had two different versions. They had the Vienna sausages, which was a little round sausages like that big in a little can, and then they had this stuff that was kind of like a Vienna sausage that was more like spam. I was the
Hmm.
big spam guy. I like that, and I also really liked the dark. It was not a dark chocolate. It was a chocolate walnut brownie. I used to go and try to collect those. Anybody didn't eat the dessert, I would go get it, man. I'm telling you, because they were like this big around. They'll probably pop a little lid, you put two spoonfuls, and you're done. I used to love those things.
What would you trade for it?
I would trade. Oh, I always traded off the really bad fruit salad. I hated those. Remember you get the fruit salad in the can? Oh my
Yeah.
God, it's the nastiest stuff in the world because that weird syrup. So I would always trade off my fruit salad. I would always trade off. And remember we had it was I don't know what you want to call it, but it was kind of like they call it beef stroganoff or something. We had a nasty name for it, beef stroganoff. But yeah, they had that beef. It was kind of like I don't know what you want to call it, like a bad lasagna smashed together in a little can that you would kind of heat up and eat. I hated that, so I would always trade that. That would be the good one though. If I get those, I collect them up because a lot of other people like that. I didn't like that. I didn't mind the spaghetti and meatball one. That one's bad, but I couldn't stand the lasagna beef stroganoff thing. So I
Yeah.
would literally collect those, get 3 or 4 of them, and then I go out and deal them off. 2 of these for a brownie. I give you 2 of these for a brownie. I try. If you went to my rack whenever we were in the field, or I'd always have my backpack. I would always try to collect those. And the guys who wouldn't eat them, I get theirs, collect them, and then I use those for trade later.
One of my favorites was the chili mac, and of course, the worst item was the vegetable flavored crackers.
Oh, that was. Oh, of course, that was. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was really bad.
Montel, I just want to thank you very much for sharing your insights and stories with me today. Your journey from military makeover to free thinking and let's be blunt, and now your new book coming out soon. I'm very excited to see where your journey takes us next. Thank you for being here, Montel. I wish you all the best, and you can come back anytime you like.
Thanks so much for having me, my friend. You be well. You take care of that family of yours. Love that family of yours, and we'll see you next time. Okay.